welcome to Buffalo Grass Fest. This is the producer panel where we're going to be talking about demos and pre-production. And I have three distinguished producers here. I have Sam Choate with Deeper Recordings. Yes, I have Alan Crossland with Route 1 Acuff Studios. And I have Scott Ferris with Amusement Park Studios. So I'm going to pass the microphone. Tell us just a little bit about your gig, your stick, what you do.
Well, like Dolph said, my name's Sam Choate. I started playing music in my bedroom at home. I got a guitar when I was like 11 years old, and my problem just got worse and worse from there. I begged my parents for a bass and then drums and a keyboard and all that. I got Pro Tools when I was young and started messing around and kind of putting the pieces together, and ended up going to South Plains College where I met Dolph. And really, so much of what I figured out getting into a creative career field was like so much of the stuff that we do is kind of this blind confidence, running in and going, I think I can do that. And of course you make mistakes and everything, but learning as you go and learning from each other. And that's what I've tried to do for the past 18 years, which is scary to say. I won't ask you guys. But so now I run a studio out of my house, and I help mainly singer-songwriters to take their really what's usually a demo or like a scratch track and kind of build an arrangement out of that with other instruments. And sometimes I play most of the instruments on the production, and other times we bring in people and we just kind of make it happen.
My name is Alan Crossland with Route 1 Acuff Studios. I grew up out in Acuff and became a really big Maines Brothers fan early on, and was inspired by Donnie Maines, wanted to play drums. So I spent the biggest part of my youth, wanting to be a professional drummer. And my parents, especially my mom, had encouraged me to go to South Plains College, go through their program. I didn't really want to at first, but I did and sailed through it and was real interested, just really took to audio. But anyway, I've been doing this for about 30 years. I kind of specialize in acoustic instruments, real players. I don't do a whole lot of EDM or electronic music. I do incorporate that into some of my clients' work, but it's not really my forte. But I just try to provide a really comfortable, creative recording space for my clients. And I cover all kinds of styles: jazz, country, a lot of singer-songwriter stuff, spoken word. I've pretty much done it all. So anyway, I hope we can give you some insights.
All right. I'm Scott Ferris, long-term Lubbockite now, originally from Colorado, but my dad was in the military, so I moved all over the world, studied the guitar from the age of 11 and wanted to be a rock star. That plan didn't work out so well. I did tour for an awful long time, but started teaching, taught at South Plains College for a while, was out there, and then started producing records for folks and really fell in love with it. And about 15, 16 years ago, I decided to leave the school and hang out a shingle and open a recording studio. It was right when the economy tanked. It was a really smart time period to open a studio. But I'm a firm believer in the music business. If you believe in what you're doing and you have a modicum of talent, but you're driven and you're really caring about the music and the art form and the people that are making it, I think you'll find a path. And I think that's true for all of us up here, Dolph included. I think that's a beautiful thing. So yeah, there we go.
Yeah, it's like one more microphone on the wall, right? So this is a panel on demos and pre-production. So I have a list of questions over here. So if you see me looking over here, I'm reminding me of what I'm supposed to ask you. But I think we want to start with what is a demo and what is pre-production? Are those separate things? Are they the same? Or how does that work? And how do you, well, who's the demo for, and how do you do demos with clients, or are you getting demos from clients? So kind of talk a little bit about each one. We'll start on that end and come back this way.
We'll start with me. Okay, great. Well, first I'd like to address pre-production because I think for me, in a sense, you can use a demo you can create a demo during pre-production, but pre-production is before that for me. I think it's essential when you're making a record to make sure that the song kills and the arrangement kills before you press record. A great song, I think you guys would probably agree with me, can actually be poorly recorded sometimes and still have an emotional impact if it's a great song. But a bad song that's recorded at a Grammy level will go nowhere because it doesn't matter. We have a phrase in our industry that you can't polish a turd. You can roll it in glitter, but you know what you get on your hands.
Eventually one off.
Yeah, that's right. So to me, it starts with a song. So I'll get together with a client, I'll sit down, I'll talk about the songs, I'll have them perform the song for me, and I believe in being brutally honest in love. If the song is not there, I'll tell them the truth. And if I lose business because I told them the truth, well, I've actually done them a service and myself a service, in that I think we all need someone to be truthful with us. And I'm certainly not always right, and I'm not like trying to act like I'm, some guru about that, but I've been around music my entire life. My listening depth is pretty encyclopedic, and I just think it's really important to start with a great song. So we're going to start there. We're going to start with lyrics, melody, chord progression, and go there and build from there up. And so I'll start with that part of the answer.
Yep. Yeah, good stuff, Scott. In my world, demo is usually what somebody sends me to give me an idea of what their song is. And it also kind of depends on whether they're going to be self-contained, doing their own stuff, bringing in their own musicians, or if I'm hiring studio players. And when a demo comes to me, and usually I just get them to do it on their iPhone, just get them to try to not be too distorted, where you can hear everything. And I usually get them to send lyrics. Just I like to be able to look at lyrics and quickly see context of whatever I'm looking at. But anyway, on the studio musician side, once we've established, okay, yeah, we are doing this song, I'll send that song to one of the players that's going to be on the rhythm section. It's usually the guitar player, and he'll write charts and kind of come up with a basic direction, for the production and the arrangement, how we're going to do it. And then when we get in the studio, we've usually determined the key by that point, but not always. We'll kind of briefly discuss the tune, what style we're going to do it in, and then the players just go in and we'll start messing with it, and we'll change turnarounds, just whatever we can come up with, to make a song more interesting, especially if it's a kind of a white bread, chord progression, just 1, 4, 5, 6 minor. See what we can come up with to make it a little bit more interesting. And usually within about an hour and a half, we've got a rhythm section cut. And that's with really good players. Now, on the self-contained route, for a band, it's good for them to do it just a simple recording where they can kind of listen back to it and kind of make some decisions on their own. What they need to do to improve the song, improve the arrangement, and it also gives me something to listen to and figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are. So that's kind of what the role of a demo is in my studio.
Right on. Yeah, I would just heavily, what's the word I'm looking for? Just agree with everything that's already been said, especially the part about starting with a great song. And what's funny is one of my favorite genres of music is rock music. I love 90s and early 2000s rock. That's kind of what I grew up with. And I always loved the way those bands and those records sounded when I was growing up, and now I listen to a lot of them and they sound awful. they're mixed horrendously. It's like really bad. But the thing is like, it doesn't really matter. And that's not to say that like the mix and the production and stuff don't matter, but it's like these huge monumental songs. It's like they sounded edgy. You could hear everything in them, but it's not what I would have chosen. It's really striking. It's really interesting. I think the one caveat that I would add, and it's going to sound like I'm like disagreeing and like nitpicking something you said, Scott, because I don't think you necessarily meant it this way, but I'm going to add something to it. When you said like to make sure you have a great song before you hit record, when you're going for the real deal, absolutely. I would say that now that everybody has access to like a laptop and a Scarlett Solo or 2i2 interface, I think that recording it on your own at home, even if you just have like an SM57 and a Scarlett and like a 10-year-old MacBook, if it'll run Pro Tools, you get Pro Tools first or whatever you can afford. The way that I really learned and honed my skills, and especially when it came to even just being a guitar player and like making up arrangements as well after that, but I didn't realize how bad I sucked until I could hear myself back with a click track, and these guys, have been around longer than I have, but we all have experience with somebody that comes in and they just can't play to the click at all. And it's like in isolation, you can even hear it as well. And tons of people, and God bless them, that get up here on a Monday night and come play, who it's their first time being out, and it's so awesome that they do that, and that we've got a space like this to do that at. But I just think back to me being in band in school, and which I failed miserably at. I was a failure in music class, like through and through all the time. But the one thing, and I did a performance at my high school last year or the year before, I don't remember. But I got to see my band director after it's been about 10 years. And the one major thing, besides the ear training that kind of crept in and everything from running scales on a French horn, which I didn't even want to play, but I learned how to tap my foot to the rhythm of the music and keep time bodily. And I would say probably 100% of the people that play out of time and out of rhythm with themselves aren't moving. They're really stiff, and they're like, they're nervous when they're playing, and they may not come across or feel nervous, but they're not engaging with themselves while playing, and they're just stiff and it's awkward. And so I think when it comes to demos and pre-production, I think it's really empowering for artists to have even just a very rudimentary, simple recording rig of their own, so that they can hear back what's going on, and they can hear the discrepancies in timing. They can hear that they're out of tune, whatever. All those things are super critical that I'm saying.
You hope they can hear that they're out of
I hope they can, yeah. But that's how I learned, though. And I think if folks are able to do that before they come to somebody like us, that saves them a lot of time, saves them money, all of that stuff. And it gets you to a finished product a lot quicker, because you have no idea, just like me in band class, realizing years later, like, oh, I actually got really good ear training growing up. Growing up with something like even just like Pro Tools on a laptop or something like that, you don't realize how much playing with a click or just hearing yourself back and actually hearing what it sounds like, because your mom is only going to tell you that you're awesome. But Pro Tools will not. Like, a recording will not lie to you, and Scott won't either, which is great. I appreciated what he said. But yeah, I think it's really important for folks to own at least like a rudimentary thing, to cut some demos, learn a little bit on their own, so that when they're coming into one of our facilities, they're not as green as they might otherwise be.
Excellent answers. So I think you touched on it a little bit, but do you guys, when you're working with new clients, like if somebody approaches you and says, hey, I want to work with you, do you ask for demos? Do you require a demo up front? And if you do, what is it that you're getting out of that demo? What is it that you're listening for? We'll start with Alan this time.
Yeah, I almost always get them to send me a demo before they come in. And sometimes if they've got a bunch of songs and they just don't want to record their own stuff, I'll get them to come in and just do a quick, 1 or 2 hour, or probably just an hour session, just to go through the songs. We're not trying to perfect anything, and just to get the songs down where we've got something to listen to. And that tells me a couple of things. I'm listening to that player, number one, to see what their time, their tuning is like, what their instrument sounds like, and what kind of challenges we're going to have when we start trying to actually go for a real recording. And of course, that's also giving me context for their songs. When I can hear them in a big pile. And sometimes they know exactly which ones they want to record. Sometimes they're wanting some feedback from me on which ones I think is best. So it just totally depends on the situation. And when we do start working on the real recording, a lot of times if they're wrestling with a click track, sometimes there is a time to ditch the click track. But if you're going to add anything rhythmic on top of it, you almost have to have a click track, or you're just going to have a nightmare trying to line stuff up. But when we start working something down, if they're having a hard time playing with a click track, I'll send them home. So get a metronome on your phone, practice, come back later after you've had a chance to mess with it. And most of them do, and they get at least good enough, where they can lock in with a click well enough we can do some overdubs on it. So every situation's different.
Yeah, I for sure want to hear that. And I don't need anything fancy. I just need them to record it on their iPhone. And I think, would you guys agree, the whole concept of a demo has changed now?
Yeah.
100%.
It's totally different. 20 years ago, a demo meant we actually go into a studio and we do baby recordings of a real record so that I can get a gig at the Blue Light. You know what I mean? And you would give that to a bar owner, and then you would hopefully generate some interest, make a little bit of money, and go back and actually record it well. I know that sounds terrible, but so I think historically that's where demos were, and I don't think we really make those anymore. I mean, unless we're alone. And I think you're totally right on the laptop thing. Right. Everybody should do that, and it also gets rid of some of the stuff that we have to sift through. Right. That we're all going to make bad songs and bad iterations of our songs, and there's so much learning there to be had. So yeah, I think you're spot on. So I just, it's funny because I'll have a client approach me and they'll be like, "Yeah, well, we'll try and set up a recording thing this weekend so we can send you a demo." And I'm like, "Dude, just put your iPhone in the room. Yeah. It'll be fine." I hear past all of that. If I'm interested in you musically, I hear way past that. I can sift through that myself. We don't need you to be perfect.
The only thing that's really bad is if it's so distorted you can't hear what's going on. Right. And I've had that a few times. It's like, I can't tell what's going on.
I would agree with that. Yeah, just make sure it's not clipping, but we don't need to hear how sweet your guitar tone is. We know how to do that.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. And I would say... what that allows us to do is it cuts all the fluff and allows us to hear what the most important things are, which is like melody, like is it a good song basically? And if so, awesome. If not, how do we get it there? And most of that comes down to like melody and lyrics, really. How many songs are 1, 4, 5, 6 minor, or cut the 6 minor because it's sad? It's too sad for radio. It won't play in Target, just 1, 4, 5. But yeah, I would say that, and again, what Alan said, looking to see what challenges we might face. Like you said, there's times to ditch the click. I find that, and I think y'all would probably agree with this, I think most of the time it's not when they can't play to it. It's more like if it's a feel thing, because there's plenty of, think of how many classical or just piano pieces that ebb and flow with tempo. That's great. But those guys have their own magnificent tempo. It's not like I can't play to a click track and keep time for myself, because if that was the case, it'd be awful. But yeah, same. I've sent a couple people home that I was like, it's just not, we're not getting it done today. I'm so sorry. And they did. They went home, they practiced all night and like came back like a completely different person, which was awesome. But yeah, I would say just cutting something on an iPhone, voice memo, that's all anybody really needs because it strips away everything else. And I'm always of the philosophy that, like, for the most part, there's some exceptions with songs that have like a really important like groove element to them. But for the most part, many, many great songs will sound good no matter what you do. They can be a cappella, they can be solo vocal and guitar, or vocal and piano. And that's kind of an indication of a great song. It's at least quite often an indication of a great song that it can be stripped back.
That's my next question. What is a great song?
Ooh. Really touching lyrics, and it doesn't have to be sappy, but something that really hits your soul, as well as a very catchy melody. I think for the most part, if you boil it down to nothing else, it's like a catchy melody, if we're talking pop music and stuff. But if you've got a catchy melody and it gives me goosebumps, then I would say that's a great song.
For me, it's just got to make me feel something. It's got to make me feel a certain way, or I feel like it's going to make somebody else feel a certain way. There's got to be something to emotionally connect to. I mean, I don't care how clever the lyrics are, how good the recording is, how good the playing is. If there's not something that emotionally engages you with that song, who cares? I mean, that's pretty much cut and dry the way I look at it.
You know, I think it also varies by the art form specifically. I mean, I would echo exactly what you guys said. First off, melody is king. Melody is going to be part of what makes me feel something. Is, you know, that you know, drop down to the third felt really great in that moment. I'm just like, oh man, and you know. I do pay attention to lyrics. I'm incredibly detailed about that because I make a lot of country music, and country music is about the lyrics. I mean, that's a really, really important thing in this town. If I'm making a rock and roll record, you can get away with some things. Like, I'm a fan of the late 90s, early 2000, you know, especially late 90s. Some of those lyrics are pretty bad, man. You know, when I look back now, but I was like, I'm singing right along, you know? So I think a song can surpass and can go past those, but to me, those are the two primary elements. And I think the thing that I'm always looking for is just a piece of magic in the middle. It has to make me move, or it has to make me feel. And when it does that, I'm ready for it. But I will be brutal if I don't think the lyrics are there. If I think you've left a line, I think if you've ever said, "Oh, that's good enough," I will call you on that. I promise, because it's not good enough. You should take it to the nth degree.
One thing I would add after listening to y'all is I think I would subtly shift my answer a little bit more to, like, it's got to make you feel something. And I would bring up a band like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, whose lyrics are completely nonsensical, and I love them. They're great. They're one of the biggest bands in the world, and they would not be the same without Anthony Kiedis. If I was reading those lyrics and they came to me in the studio, honestly, I don't know if that would be if I would be smart enough to see if I was looking at the lyrics too closely. I don't know if I would have the wits about me to see, if I was judging by lyrics, that was a great song or that's a great band. But they make you feel something. They're so cool. So yeah, that's an interesting exception, I would say, to what I said.
So how much song fixing or song co-writing do you do with your clients, and how do you navigate that? Are some of them receptive to that, or some of them, no, this is my song? Because we all know, I always tell people, you know, the songs are the songwriter's children. So, you know, and they have their favorites, and we may have favorites, and they may not be the same favorites, but how much do you do? Like, do you go in and help them rewrite lyrics? Anything do you do help them? Obviously, we talked about maybe rewriting chord progressions, but melodies, anything like that. How do you navigate working on that?
That's where music production expertise and having a good ear with EQ and compression and stuff like that just go out the window, and it's like all interpersonal skills. It's really it can be challenging at times because you do want to treat it with the utmost respect because we're probably all songwriters ourselves and musicians, so we know what it's like to really love something and to create something and kind of want to protect it in a way. I find that the more, and this is not to place myself on a pedestal, but in a collaborative sort of aspect, I find that the more that a client of mine is open to messing with stuff, because I'm not always right, they're not always right, we're both trying to make great music. So I find that the more that they're open to trying different things and kind of messing with stuff, the better that we can make that song. If it's somebody that's more rigid and going, I don't know, I really feel like it should be this, there's a point where I will try, and I'll try to be as cool about it as possible. And most of the time, my kind of signature phrase is like, can we just try this real quick? Like, because it might totally suck. It might totally suck. I could be totally wrong, but can we just try it real quick? And if not, we'll go back to yours. Because sometimes also they'll hear it in a different way, and that might open their ears and their eyes to something a little bit different. And if they hate it, I got to go with what they said. I even if I don't like it, even if I disagree, they're the artist, they're paying me, and I've done my best. Because it's a taste thing. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's not like I'm not a carpenter, and I'm not. We're not talking about like, hey, could you clip the master bus for me? I'm like, no, but it's a taste thing. It's a total taste thing. So there's not really an objective right or wrong thing. And I most of the time with the clients that I work with, they come to me because they know that I offer something, and so they are open to at least like, hey, let's try something different. And that's honestly most of the time when we break into something like that I didn't even expect either, and that we find something really cool to add to the song. As far as like the co-writing, the fixing, stuff like that, I do a lot of co-writing with my clients. Most of the time, I'm kind of acting as the producer and the session musician. And there's plenty of times where we bring other people in, but a lot of times it'll be like kind of two people in a room and making music. And so a lot of co-writing. And again, that's another thing that like that's what makes people come to me specifically, is that's a little bit, and not, you guys are totally one-on-one and amazing. I think that we're all where we are, not just because of our abilities in music, but because of like our interpersonal skills with artists and stuff. But people know that they're kind of coming to me with a song, and they play like guitar, piano, and they sing. And so we kind of work on things together. Fixing things, that kind of what I already said. Most of the time people are open to it, at least trying something different. I've had plenty of times where like one word really bugged me in a song, and it just completely ruined the song for me. And I was like, can we just try on instead of in? And, or like, could we drop the if right before this line? And it's like, whether or not that makes a world of difference, I don't always know. But most of the time they're receptive to at least trying it. And I try to get things as good going in. I don't know if this was necessarily your question about fixing it, but fixing things in post-production is a thing. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, definitely try not to do that. And what's funny about, at least as much as possible, there's always editing, but something funny about what you're talking about with like the baby recordings you used to make to like either send to a venue or like send to a label or something, you can listen to those and it's like better than anything I've ever made. So many of, I'm like, and they re-recorded this? They re-recorded this. It's so crazy. So I just found that interesting, but yeah.
I myself am not really a writer. I am not a lyricist. I'm really a catalyst in the purest sense of the word. I think it's a disadvantage and an advantage at the same time. It's an advantage. I'm a little bit removed from all of the individual elements of the song-making process. So I'm not married to the drummer. I'm not married to the guitarist, or the drums, the guitar, the writer, the singer. They're all equal elements in whatever I'm working in. But I am very good at managing those elements. If a particular part the piano player is playing is crowding the lyrics, that's something I pick up on really quick and say, hey, we need to simplify here. So I'm kind of like a referee of everything that's going on. And I am a good technical writer as far as just writing, just long form writing. I am good at that, but I have never been good at writing lyrics. Now, it's not to say that I don't make suggestions for lyric changes. I'm like you. There's times it's like this one word has got to go. This is not going to fly. And, I will make suggestions, and I have come up with a line or two, but, I've never asked or expected to be a co-writer on anything because I really don't see myself as a writer. I pull all the elements together and try to bring it into one unified, the listener, they really don't care, exactly what the guitar player is doing or the piano player. They're listening to whatever's the lyrics, whatever feeling is coming out of that tune. That's what they're listening to. So that's the prize I always try to keep my eye on when I'm working in the studio.
I actually am a songwriter, not a particularly good one or prolific one, but I've had the pleasure of working with some truly, truly great songwriters. And the amazing thing is when I get to work with folks like that, they're more open. The better they are, the more open they are. Especially if you approach it with true love and humility and honesty about it. One thing I do think was a wise thing that you said in your question, Dolph, is that these are people's babies, and it's a little bit like, they bring their baby to me, and I go, oh, your baby's adorable, except its eye is just, if we could... and it's that left ear, and that's pretty offensive. And so I do think developing a rapport with your client where they know that you have their back, and I will be brutally honest with my clients. I have a lot of statements that I will use. For instance, if I ever say to a client, hey man, I may not be right, but I'm willing to circle the wagons on this. That means, I really think I'm right and I'm ready to take a bullet for this. So I think this is something you should pay attention to. And then there's other times I just say, man, I don't know if I'm right here, but I would be remiss if I did not bring this line up. It feels like maybe you gave up right here. Invariably, every time I do that, they go, dang it, I just didn't think that was right. And I'm like, okay, why'd you bring it to me? You knew. But they just needed somebody to tell them the truth. And then they're like, yeah, dang it, you're right, I knew that. And so I see that a lot. And we live in Lubbock, Texas. Lubbock, Texas is an incubator for music. The hotbed of the stuff that bubbles up out of here, I do not know how it happens, but I haven't seen anything like it anywhere else that I've lived, and it's an amazing, amazing thing. So we spend a lot of time shepherding new artists, and in this community, because of places like here at the Blue Light where they have the songwriters group, I find that the songwriters are pretty open because they're very used to co-writing, to working with others and gutting their songs, and sometimes if you're going to make good art, there's going to be some blood on the floor.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the things Scott and I talked about a long time ago when the money went away in the music business, when people stopped buying labels, big record labels stopped doing artist development, and so we were talking about it. And it was like it falls to us in the regional markets to do artist development, right? So, what are some of the things that you could tell these artists, these writers that are bubbling up? What are some things that you think they should focus on? What is it that will help them to get to the next level? Whether it's from I'm at home writing stuff and now I want to go out and play, or is it I'm writing, I've worked with you, or I'm going to work with you. How do I get to that next level, whatever that next level may be?
I'd definitely like to hear Scott's take on this first. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Thanks. Yeah, I do a lot of development with new artists, and I think the first thing I'm always looking for in that moment is I believe my job is to amplify. I believe my job is to help them figure out.
He's a guitar player.
That's right. I play through really loud amps. I believe that my job is to help them figure out what makes them tick and then make them more of that. Now, I'm not here to rewrite the world for them. I'm not here to change who they are other than to challenge it and hopefully encourage them to strive. So that's the thing that I'm looking for. So I'm going to be having a lot of conversations with them about that very topic, about who are you? I know when I did the second full length with Flatland, Cleto and I sat down and we talked about, because we had lightning struck on the first record. We were just trying to make a decent little record. You know what I mean? We knew we were onto something. We knew we had good music, but we certainly didn't expect it to do what it did. I mean, we watched lightning struck. I watched it happen. I think we had it in a jar, but the jar could sit on a shelf and never be heard, right? So we watched that hit. So when we were making that second record, the whole concept was, where does the band go from here? How is this going to grow? I remember talking to Cleto, and I turned to him and I said, hey man, how are we going to make this bloom? You guys have a bud right now. How is this flower going to open? And I want to see bands do that and artists do that, no matter where they are in the continuum. It's just that we would help them open and become more what they are.
For me, I'm kind of removed from the live music scene. I'm getting older and I'm not out that much. I try to probably make my contribution more on the technical end of the studio, in the studio, and I cannot stress play with a click track. When you practice, at least spend 10 minutes playing with a click track. Because if you cannot play with a click track, you cannot play with live musicians. And most people that are out there these days, there are exceptions, but most of them are really good time players. Learn to sing in tune. A lot of that is vowel shape. That's one of the biggest things that I see singers have a big problem with, staying in tune, is changing their vowel shape when you're trying to hold out a note. And I'm not a singer, but I actually understand the physics of singing and can really help a singer, kind of hone their style a little bit just by pointing out some things that they do. And usually they're kind of like, oh, okay, I get it now. And by the time they get to the end of the project, they're a lot better musician or singer than they were when they came in. And same thing on guitar players. Inexperienced guitar players tend to claw chords. D chord especially is real easy to pull sharp because you just got this, hammer grip that you can pull on it. So it's like, hey, you keep pulling that B string sharp. You got to lighten up. You got to start paying attention to your touch. So that's probably one of my bigger contributions that I make on trying to improve a player. And I always love it when I see somebody that's come in with a lot of bad habits, and a lot of times I will send them home to practice. It's like, this is not going to happen today. You need to go work on this for a while. And but when we get to the end of the project, it's all of a sudden they're a lot better musician than they were when they came in. So I'm like, score. Yeah. So to me, that's probably one of my biggest contributions I can make.
Yeah, I mean, I love what both of y'all have already said, especially in the amplification, big time. And the part where you're talking about like challenging people. I feel like people can't fully know who they are until something about them has been challenged. And if there's whether it be a lyrical line or a stylistic choice that they're maybe not sure about, until somebody comes along and goes, is that what you want to do? Is that what it is? And they go, actually, I don't know. And then that kind of forces them to make a decision internally. And that's sort of how people are able to figure out who they are as they grow and everything. Growth is a huge thing. So many times sessions at my studio turn into like therapy sessions, which is great. I'm absolutely here for it. Yeah, I'm absolutely here for it. And I feel like it's so important to be able to kind of walk with the artist through that. I have a huge ace up my sleeve because my wife, who's out there, is a phenomenal singer and has been a vocal instructor for a long time. And even though she says I used to be a vocal instructor, I call her in like almost every session because whenever we have difficulties with certain vowel shapes or just hitting certain notes that the singer's like, I can't hit that note. It's like, you're hitting the note. You're just doing it in falsetto. We just need, it's really confidence, or it might be something else. But so again, it's like, if it's a confidence thing, it's like, we're not talking about music anymore. We're talking about like self deprecation and like being scared. And what are you scared of? And like, sometimes it's like, was your mom mean to you growing up? It's like, it gets really deep really fast. And it's like when you couldn't hit a note and you thought it was a technique thing, it's like, it's really like, I feel really nervous right now, or I feel scared, or I've never done this in front of anybody before. Stuff like that. Or like, this song is really personal and it's scary to put it out there, things like that. And so from my own experiences with difficulties and stuff, human related difficulties in life, like everybody goes through, I think that makes me a better steward and shepherd in the studio of people's art and of them, because at the end of the day, it's going into the studio, it's about them. It's about their music, and it's about us helping them to make it the best that it can be. And sometimes that's like uncomfortable truths, and being really honest with them about it. But just like you were saying, Scott, it's like the better people are more open, and I think it's because the way that you get good is not that you popped out and you just like gold. It's like there's like 3 people like that, and one of them's probably Paul McCartney, and yeah. But for most of us, and I would say even them, I will go that far, even them, I think everybody started out sucking, and it's like the people that get really good are just honest with themselves. And that's why I was highlighting like the benefits of having even just a rudimentary home recording rig, is because you can go through what might take you years and thousands of dollars at a professional studio. You can do, if you're lucky enough to get started when you're young, you can go through a lot of that stuff when you're young and in the privacy of your own bedroom or whatever it might be. And really, like, it's like, how do you unclog a pipe? It's like, there's going to be a lot in there. So you can get all that stuff flowing and out of the way before you get out into the world. And then I think for a lot of people, it's like, that's how you run into those people who are like 16, 17, 18. And you're like, you're amazing. Like, how are you so good? And their answer is never, I don't know, I was just born with it. It's like, no, it's like, well, I started when I was 10 and I've been playing, instead of playing football, I played guitar, and stuff like that. So I would just echo a lot of the things that they said. Big time amplification of who they are, and also sifting through who they're not, and kind of doing some tilling to the soil. A lot of times getting into that space brings up a lot of emotions and stuff if they're having difficulties. And again, it's not always about like, there's vowel shapes, there's pulling chords and stuff. Sometimes it's not even like singing technique that they lack. A lot of the times they have it in them, and they just need a little bit of like guidance from people like y'all. And it's super awesome to hear y'all talk about that as well. It's like, because I've had so much of the same experience. It's cool.
Do you work with bands? And when you do you do pre-production? Do you go and hang out with them at their rehearsal space, or do you bring them in? Like, I think you said a lot of times you bring them in and just do like an hour and have them play through stuff. So you mentioned a little bit about that. So
I wouldn't actually do that with a band. I just get them to record something on their own and send it to me. It's really not, to me, it's not. It depends on the project and how much I'm going to be involved in the production, and what their budget is. I mean, I've pretty much got to charge some money to go do that. But I've found it pretty much the easiest for them just to do a good iPhone recording. Where I can hear the parts, I can kind of hear the strengths and weaknesses of the players, what I'm going to be having to deal with in the studio. What are the drummers' dynamics like? That tells me a lot of what I need to know, and I may shoot them some suggestions, on arrangement, before they ever come in the studio. And, we'll have, kind of made that communication and have a plan before they ever get in. And then we just start working it. We get the drum sounds, get everybody going, get everybody's headphone mix. Can we play it down as a band, or do we need to strip it down to, drums, bass, and guitar and a rough vocal, And, some bands are really good. They can, come in and, play it down, and some have a lot of problems, that they got to work on. So, we may start out, cutting a rhythm section and then say, okay, well, let's work the drums now. And then, maybe measure by measure if it's really bad. I've done that before. It's miserable, but sometimes you got to do that to get through it. And then we'll work down the bass and, kind of start building it. But I do always try to start with a live performance of everybody that can play well enough, just to get the feel and the structure, because that kind of tells you if your tempo is right, if you need to make any arrangement changes. Even if everybody's playing rough and you're going to have to re-record everybody, you at least start out with the song. Like you're saying, you got to start with the song, so you at least know what you're starting out with ahead of time.
Yeah, and that's something I think you're really brilliant at, Alan. We talk about as engineers, we call it a board side manner, and your board side manner is really great. I've had a chance to work with you before, and it's really, really fantastic. Yeah. Well, that's kind. It kind of has to be, or you don't make a living. You got to work.
Scott and I had the pleasure of co-producing a project together, and it was a really good experience. We recorded the rhythm sections, half of them at my studio and half of them at his studio, and the overdubs just depending on however it worked out. But it was a really good experience. I really enjoyed it.
I did too, and it's really funny because I believe in competition, all of that, whatever. We're allies, is how Alan put it, and Sam too. And
it takes all of us to make a scene. It really does.
Yeah, we can all make the water level rise, and everybody's ship floats.
And one thing that really worked on when me and Scott were co-producing is we have totally different MOs as far as the way we work in the studio, but they were totally compatible. And, he learned stuff from me, I learned stuff from him. And it was just a really good experience. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too, that whole iron sharpens iron thing, and we both have different approaches, and I would go, God, that's so much smarter than mine. I'm stealing that. Back to Dolph's question, my favorite records to make are band records. I love working with bands. I love everything. I grew up listening to bands, playing in bands, and I loved being a 15-year-old playing rock and roll in the garage, and we sucked. It was just awful, but it was magic, And so that just thrills me, when I see a band come in, and I love working with that. And one of the things that I kind of really love about it is the very limitations of each musician. Generally, most bands don't have a genius in them. Okay, if they are the Police, and Sting says, "Here's what you're going to play," because that's what happened on the first Sting record. Okay, is he gave them all the arrangements, They certainly, Stuart Copeland and Andy Summers added their flair to it, but it was Sting's baby, That's magic, and that's incredible when that happens. But most mere mortals have limitations musically, but it's those very limitations and that amalgamation that creates something that has a spark in it, and that's what I love. I love that more than anything else. I work with studio musicians every day. I love that too, but I just love seeing an actual band that plays live, comes together. And so, I go to rehearsal halls. I go to their rehearsal hall and, and come out with a contact high and, all of that, I bring them to my studio, and I used to teach at South Plains College, and I taught ensembles. So I became very proficient, I guess, at being able to walk into a room and go, hey man, that's actually the wrong chord. I know you're playing the D, but that's a D over F sharp, and it's voice leading over to the G chord. So if you could bass player, if you could walk that from the E minor up, and I can sit there and rip it apart right there, and in that moment be able to help guide them. And one of my favorite ones is, okay, they start the guitar, they start singing, so that, it's usually a singer-songwriter who just got his first band, right? So chinga, 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 and now the band comes in. I was like, okay, guys, hey, this is the 4th song you've started with acoustic guitar. Stop. You're allowed to do that once on the record, and then we're moving on. So there's just these small little things, and the thing that I find that's amazing is after that, they come back in the next time, I got way less work to do because they've got that figured out. So I love working with bands. Artist development. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, well, for me, I mostly work with singer-songwriters, so that's why I definitely wanted to hear from them more, because I knew they would have a lot more to add right off the bat. I've been in rooms where Scott has come in and listened and given some advice and stuff, which was really awesome. He's always the thing, and first off, I don't want to sound like I'm like throwing Alan under the bus. It's just that we literally just met today. Even though, so I have all of these good things to say about Scott, and none of them to say about Alan. But it's not because they don't exist, just that we haven't met before. But again, it's like it's one thing to have a great ear. It's one thing to know what 400 hertz sounds like. It's things like that. It's one thing to know when you're over compressing. But the thing that Scott does is like light up a room when he walks in, and he's got a very powerful. You've got a lot of energy, dude. You got a lot, and it's good energy too. But you're incredible at walking into a room and being able to both see what's going on as a whole, but then pick certain things apart and kind of address those, but also without ever hurting anybody's feelings. Like I don't know that you've ever hurt anyone's feelings in your life. And it probably made them a better person, though. That's what I mean. It's like they probably needed it. So I think that's really, really important. It's like one thing to know what's wrong and to know like you're playing out of tune. But I've been in plenty of bands where there was that one guy who did know better. I've even been this guy who did know better and who could tell there was something wrong, and we're just about it. It's like, and people don't respond well to that. And so it's like one thing to have a great ear and a great keen sense about what maybe ought to be happening. In your case, talking about like the voice leading, it's like that's fairly objective. It's like this kind of should be happening, but it's maybe like it's at least 60% how you say it. It's at least probably more like 80%, honestly.
Yeah, one thing I would add on that, and this one thing I'm sure we're all really good at up here is exactly what he's talking about. When you're really critiquing somebody, sometimes you can start going a little too far or a little too fast, and the minute you feel that self-confidence start dropping off, you got to do something, and you got to do something fast. Yeah. And it may just be taking a break. It might be shutting down for the end of the day, taking another approach, but you don't have much time, or you got a client that is just going to be completely shut down on you. Yeah. And watching for that and knowing how to deal with it. I mean, that's really one of the gifts of what we do. Because I mean, we are on your side. You being the artist, we want you to succeed. We want you to sound good. I mean, that's what we're here for. But it's just like a coach can push an athlete to the point where they're just, I can't do this. Yeah. And man, you got a problem when you do that. So that's one thing you got to really, really watch for in the studio.
Yeah, I generally refer to things like that as a poop sandwich, which I use different words, or an Oreo, but you can always kind of layer one of the critiques in the middle. It's like, hey, that's really awesome. I am loving this song. I noticed that there's this little thing going on in like the third verse though. Could we check that out? I'm loving this vibe. I just want to like go to that spot real quick and see if we can kind of mess with that and get things going there. I try to be real picky about the words I use. Like, let's fix that. I don't say that. I'll be like, hey, let's work on that. Let's mess around with that thing, little things like that. But I would say whether it's in the context of a band or one-on-one with a singer-songwriter or whatever, it's it sounds like we're all kind of saying the same thing. It's the
My
utmost.
catchphrase is, I think you got a better one.
Yeah. That was awesome. Let's do it one more time.
Lloyd Baines. That was perfect. But do it one more time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think we've reached our time here. So, how about 15 seconds of quick advice to someone who's ready to come record with one of you guys?
Wow.
15 seconds.
Don't do that. He's counting beside me. I would say quick advice is do as much on your own as you possibly can. That includes if it's just a voice memo, listen back to it. Try to do your best and to hear exactly what's going on. And I would say general advice would just be like, coming from somebody who's hugely like detail oriented is the nice way to say it. Perfectionistic is the not nice way to say it. Like sometimes you just gotta make music, dude. You gotta let it be music. You gotta let it suck if it does it first, and it's great to ask for help. And I think the most important thing that I've done along my journey so far is just to try to get out of my own way. And I would advise other artists to do that. Don't question yourself so much. It can definitely lead you to becoming greater. But if that's your default stance, like it is for me, and for a lot of artists to nitpick themselves, criticize themselves, try to always do better, I would say that's great. But if it's your default setting, try to learn how to be kind to yourself in addition to that, because I think that's where real greatness comes from.
And one thing I want to touch on that we really haven't touched on, and just being prepared in the studio, is just physically what you need to do with your instruments. Guitar players, bass players, you need to be sure you've got fresh strings, not brand new strings. I cringe anytime somebody changes their strings right before they come in the studio. They're just too bright. It rarely ever sounds good. It doesn't need a whole lot, but at least 2 or 3 hours of playing, just get some finger oil worked into it. And have an intonation set up by a professional luthier, and they go in and can make slight adjustments on the guitar that make the frets tune up, because there is nothing that will kill a session faster than an instrument that will not tune up. It's I've had to just can a session before. It's like, man, you got to go get that guitar fixed. Or I now have some guitars in my studio that can be borrowed. But and same thing for drums. If you're using your own drums, be sure you got. Same thing with heads. You don't want brand new. You need to get a little bit of wear on them, get them stretched out a little bit. But just go through the condition of your rig and have some extra strings. Be thinking ahead. Some extra chords. Studios are not real good about keeping just regular 1/4-inch chords, because they walk off all the time. I try to keep a few around, but especially if you've got a lot of foot pedals and stuff, those little chords are notorious for going bad. So go through all your gear. Have fresh batteries. If you're using batteries in your acoustic guitar, and especially if you got to take the strings off to change the battery in your guitar, those are always fun in the studio. But yeah, just go through all your gear and be ready when you come in, and come in with an open mind, good attitude. Your engineer, your producer, they're there to get you what you want and make you sound good. So anyway.
I think mine's a little bit on the artistic side. I think you should stick to your guns. I think if you believe in your music, I don't think you should maybe try to chase what's commercial out there. I have a lot of people talk about, oh man, I want to make sure this is a hit. And man, if I could bottle a hit, I'd be doing it literally every minute of every day. And sometimes lightning just has to strike. So if you believe in what you do, you're going to find an audience out there. It may be 1,000 people, it may be 10 people, it may be 10 million. But just stick to your guns. Believe in what you're doing and pursue it. And I'd encourage you to do that. There's plenty of room for you.
All right, that concludes this panel. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So, thanks to the Blue Light for hosting us.